Thank you, Sandy. Next, we have our Sutter County Museum report. So we have the director, Jessica Hugen? Haugen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You were very close, though. Closer than most people get, so thanks. Is this thing on? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
I'm not used to using a mic, so forgive me if I step away from it too far. Just wave at me and be like, hey, yeah, Tony, you're on it, right? Okay, good, I figured. So, my name's Jessica Haugen. I am the director curator of the Community Memorial Museum of Sutter County, which is way too long. I don't expect you to remember that. You can just think Sutter County Museum for now. So thank you for having me here tonight. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to give a presentation to all of you. I've been with the museum. It'll be 3 years next month, which has gone by in a flash. My predecessor worked there for 29 years. I am not making any guarantees that I'll last that long, but we'll see what happens, right? So I'm from Oregon originally. I have undergraduate degrees in anthropology and women's studies and a master's degree in museum studies, and I've worked in museums since early 2005. So this is what I do. It's what I love, and I'm going to say that we have a fantastic museum here. So how many of you guys have been to the museum? Raise your hands. Ooh, that's a much better percentage than I usually get. So thank you. Thank you. And for those of you who have never been, we're open every day but Monday. And we're just across the street. So no excuses. Get over there. So this one? Okay, fantastic. So although I'm sure everyone who's been to the museum is an expert on the museum already, I'm just going to give you a brief snapshot of the history of the museum so you know, because it surprises a lot of people. So our museum has actually been here and open since 1975 in the building we're in right now, right across Butte House Road. There was a small volunteer-run museum over in Carriage Square before the museum we have now. That was run by the Sutter County Historical Society, and they saw a bigger need for something more formal and more regularly supported. They talked with a lot of community members, and Howard and Norma Harder, who were peach farmers and had a cannery, they came forward and they said, yes, you're right. This is a very valuable thing. We need it for our community. They gave the initial funding and the land that we sit on to Sutter County, and they said, let's build this. So on your left there is a picture. You can't really see them, but it's Norma and Howard with a third person from the county shortly before the museum opened. So that picture's from mid-1975. And on the right, that is what the front of the museum looks like now. Very similar. So, briefly, the organization of the museum, we are a department of Sutter County. They pay for salaries and benefits for 2 full-time employees, 2 full-time. Keep that number in mind when I get further in the presentation and you're astonished by how much we're doing over there. They pay for utilities, building maintenance, very basic business expenses, think your phone bill, internet bill, that sort of thing. We are fantastically well supported also by our nonprofit, the Museum Association. And it really is a partnership between the county and the association. We could not exist if one or the other discontinued the support of the museum. So I'm very glad that we have both of those to support us. So the Museum Association, they support basically everything that makes us a museum. So our temporary exhibits, upgrades to permanent exhibits, education programs, our gift shop, marketing, fundraising events, all of this is supported by the Museum Association. So like I said, we're very lucky to have them. And I'm going to embarrass Tony. Tony Curlin is currently the president of the Museum Association. Tony, stand up. I know you can't be embarrassed, but I thought I'd try anyways. Thank you, Tony, for what you've done for us. So we have a lot of things in the museum. Little and big. We have permanent exhibits on the Sutter Buttes, of course, because, you know, they're the Buttes. They figure so huge around here. The Nisenan-Maidu, those are the Native American peoples who lived here. John Sutter, of course. Can't talk about Sutter County without talking about John Sutter. The history of agriculture, our multicultural gallery, and early days in Yuba City. And those last two I'm going to go into just a tiny bit of detail. So the multicultural gallery we've had since around, well, I'll say a decade or so. It was my predecessor's brainchild, and what she wanted to do is make sure we were telling the story of everyone who lives in this area. Museums are sort of a Western European construct, and generally speaking, you tend to see the stories of the Western European settlers in them because of the construct of museums. And that's not right, and it's not fair, and that means you're not getting the whole story of the history of the area. So currently in that gallery, we have exhibits on the history of the Mexican American people in the area, the Chinese American, the Punjabi, the Japanese American, and the Hmong population. And occasionally when I rattle that list off, people say, hang on a minute, some of those communities that you just listed are actually mostly in Yuba County, not as much in Sutter County. Which brings me to one of the most important things I like to say about the museum. That long name that I told you didn't have to remember, that is the museum's name, the first word in it is community. And that's the most important word in our name, not Sutter County. Staff at the museum, we think of ourselves really as the Yuba Sutter Museum, which really doesn't do it justice either. We're this community's museum. And we don't care that there's a river in between it. We don't care that there's county lines and people tell me all the time about the Big Little game and the history of the relationship between Yuba City and Marysville. We're here for everyone. So that's our goal. So if you guys have friends in Marysville and Yuba County, please tell them that too. Because we don't get as many visitors from that side of the river, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Our early days in Yuba Sutter, I put that on our permanent exhibits. That covers a number of areas in the museum, and it's what I affectionately call our obligatory old stuff. It's the stuff you expect to see in the museum from the turn of the century. It's the Model T, it's the pictures of old schoolhouses throughout the region, those sorts of things. So that all is encompassed in that. We also do temporary exhibits. We try to do between 4 and 6 temporary exhibits every year. Some of those we create, some of those we rent from organizations that create them and then rent them out to whoever wants to borrow them in the museum world. Some of them come to us from other local entities. We just hosted one for Yuba College that they created to celebrate their 90th anniversary. So with all of our temporary exhibits, we try to make sure that we have a local or regional connection, so it is really appealing to our community, We cover a variety of topics to make sure that we are trying to have something interesting for everyone, at least some of the time. And a personal inclination of mine is I like it when there's contemporary connections as well. So if we can relate the history to something happening right now, that makes it even more accessible for most of our community members. So the picture in this slide is an exhibit that we had last fall. Every fall we do a history-themed art show. It's another way just to broaden what we're offering to our community. And that particular exhibit was the National Park Service. We were celebrating their 100th anniversary, and it was local and regional artists that we included in that show. And then in this one, and Terrell just handily handed me a pointer and I didn't see how to use it. There we go. This one up here was a really phenomenal exhibit that we had at the beginning of this year called Tattooed and Tenacious, Inked Women in California's History. And I know some of you are thinking, hang on, tattoos in a museum, is that really? Yes. There's a long history of tattooing, not just in California, but across the world. And I was really excited to host an exhibit that really did help open our doors to a lot of new visitors. We had a huge number of first-time visitors in to see that exhibit. We also did 4 live tattooing demonstrations in the museum while we had that exhibit up, which also helped bring in a lot of new visitors. So we're really trying to broaden our audience, expand what we're offering. A few people in town, especially early on when I was here, told me that they had the idea that the museum was sort of an old ladies club. I don't want to have an old ladies club. I want to have a community resource that you all will feel comfortable and feel excited coming to visit. So that's what we're working towards. The exhibit on the top right here was a program that Yuba Sutter Arts did last year called Portraits of Veterans. We were one of the locations where they displayed the portraits for a while. We had that up Veterans Day through Thanksgiving last year. And the one on the bottom we had a little further back about a year and a half ago, and that was all about the gold rush. So that goes back to the idea of being one community. Although the gold rush didn't happen in Sutter County, obviously we were hugely influenced by the gold rush, and it happened just, up in the foothills. You really can't tell the story of Sutter County without talking about Yuba County and the foothills and the broader region. So we do a lot of educational programs at the museum as well. We've really been trying to increase what we offer here too, particularly our kids programs. And with the kids programs, we're not really going heavy on the education right now. What we're trying to do is teach kids that the museum is fun. So we're offering a monthly night at the museum program. We invite kids to wear their PJs, come in, hang out with us, eat pizza, and watch a movie in the museum. And they sort of soak in all the good museum-y stuff that's around them while we're watching the movie. We had West Coast Falconry come out and do a free flight program in the park behind the museum. We've had them twice now, actually, and that's always really popular. We've done storytelling off and on over the last few years, so we really offer a lot for kids. For adults, it's a little more of what you would expect. It's lectures, it's gallery talks, it's new book presentations. The picture that I put up under adult programs up there is actually from the exhibit that we have right now. Matika Wilbur is a Native American photographer, and she has made it her life's work to photograph all of the federally recognized tribes that still exist. And she has photographed people in California, and a couple of the photos in the exhibit are people in California. And the work is beautiful. We had her come out and talk about her project and what she's up to a couple of weeks ago, so that was really fantastic. Trees and Traditions. So I mentioned that the association does fundraisers for us. Trees and Traditions is our largest fundraiser every year. This will be the 39th year that we host Trees and Traditions, which is sort of astonishing, and it just keeps growing and keeps getting more popular. So Trees and Traditions is the best holiday party that you will go to. It's on December 1st this year, so mark your calendars. We've been making a lot of changes to that event too, so if you went a few years ago and weren't sure about it, give us another try. So I've been talking a lot about what we're up to now and what my ideas are about the museum. So here's where we really get into it. We are in a really fantastic period of growth and revitalization. We have been strategic planning. We've undergone some assessment programs. I'll get into that in a minute. The basis of all of it, though, the basis of everything we do is our mission statement. So this is our new mission statement that we identified during our strategic planning that we started last year. So it says, we share local stories to strengthen community bonds, to inspire celebration of our diverse cultural heritage, and to demonstrate how understanding the past prepares us for the future. So that mission statement guides everything that we do in the museum. Assessments. There are a whole host of programs out there for museums to really look at how they're doing business. Are they living up to the standards of the industry, et cetera? We went through 2 of those last year that we sort of timed to work out with our strategic planning. The first was an overall organizational assessment. The second was a look at how we're taking care of our collection. That's the artifacts and the photographs that we have. Both of them, I was really pleased with the results. We got great reports from both of them that we were able to work into our strategic plan. And here's our next slide, our strategic plan. This is a distillation of the top goals that we identified as we went through that process. And that process was staff of the museum, key volunteers, a committee made up of association members, and various people from the county were involved at certain levels as well. So basically it says we're gonna look at everything we do and reevaluate everything and make sure that we're being the best we can be for this community, that we are being the institution that this community deserves us to be. So I won't read through all of these because I think I've been talking for a long time already. Also part of our revitalization effort is we're looking at how we present ourselves to the community, so marketing and branding. We recently hired Brianna Struckmeyer, who used to work with the Chamber of Commerce, to help us write a marketing plan. We'll have that from her next month. I'm really excited to get going on that. In the meantime, we've been revamping our presence, so we created a new website for the museum last year, suttercountymuseum.org. There's the homepage there. There's our brochure on the right, so you can see we're trying to have a consistent look in what we're up to. We're also now offering an e-newsletter, so if any of you are out there going, how can I keep up with all this? You can go to that homepage and scroll to the bottom and sign up for the e-newsletter. It goes out once a month. This is a slide that I thought you all would be really interested to see. So our visitation at the museum has been going up over the last few years. In 2016, we had 6,800 visitors come through our door. In 2017, we had 7,800 visitors. And the first half of this year, we had over 5,100 visitors. So that's a pretty steep increase. I'm really thrilled by it. I would like to see those numbers continue to climb. The reason I thought that you guys would be so interested in these numbers is the percentages down below. So July through December of last year, 72.5% of our visitors were from within Yuba City. We started tracking in July of last year, so sorry I can't tell you before that. But and that percentage went up the first half of this year. Over 80% of our visitors were from in Yuba City. So we although we say we're for the community, obviously we're not getting the word out well enough, particularly on the other side of the bridge. So that's where the marketing effort comes in. But we're doing a lot to serve the residents of Yuba City and the greater community. Partnerships. We have a lot of friends. We work with Yuba Sutter Arts. I mentioned the Portraits of Veterans program. We're working on some other things with them. The Sutter County Commission for Children and Families, and I always say that backwards. We've been hosting a number of ongoing children's programs for them, as well as a monthly caregiver cafe. So they've become a good partner, and they're actually sponsoring some of the things we're doing in our new community garden, which I'll talk about in a minute. The superintendent of schools, we've been working more closely with the curriculum coordinators to try to offer a lot more good content for the teachers to use. We've done programs with the library. Middle Mountain Interpretive Hikes is a great program for us to partner with. About half of their hikes every season actually meet in the museum. They utilize our exhibits to orient the hikers, so it's worked out really well. We have a gift shop too. So for all of you who are looking for the best place to shop in the area, come see us. We have a lot of books, local, regional, statewide, history, subjects related to exhibits we have in the museum. We also have a lot of children's books, and we tend to focus on the multicultural kids books that we can find. We also are carrying a lot of locally and made in California products. So like I said, come check us out. The gift shop's open every day. The museum is open, and we always have new stuff coming in. Those are a couple of examples of items made in California, 2 of them made right here in Yuba City that we have in the store. The community garden. This was a brand new addition for us. We just installed it this spring. It was the brainchild of 2 women who were born and raised here in Yuba City and wanted to give back, and they wanted to create a community garden. And one of them actually brought her kids to one of our Night at the Museum programs last summer and came to the property and had a great time and was like, oh, the museum, why aren't we doing the garden there? So we had a meeting, and you know how government works. It took us a little while to jump through all the county's hoops, but here we are, and it's been a really wonderful addition to the property. A lot of new people have been coming to engage with the garden. We've been doing a lot of kids programs in the garden. They're starting to experiment with adult programming in the garden, so it's been a really beneficial addition for us. The California Cultural and Historical Endowment Grant, another mouthful. They recently awarded us $73,000 so that our storage shelving, which is the picture on the left right now, will eventually look like the picture on the right. We're going to get to install high-density mobile shelving in our collection storage areas, which is really going to dramatically increase how much stuff we can fit in the space we already have, which is really exciting for me because we have over 20,000 artifacts and over 7,000 photographs that we take care of in the museum. So having proper access to those things will be very, very beneficial for us. And not just us, for the whole community. When we can access them better, people who come to us with research questions, or when we're planning an exhibit, or if another institution wants to borrow something for an exhibit, all of this will be more accessible for all of that. And we're looking at next spring to install our new shelving, which brings me to some other projects that we're hoping to do next spring. The original organization of the museum was very complicated, so I'll just describe it as there was money left over from the original construction of the museum that somehow still exists. So it can only be used to upgrade our facility, so I'm going to go ahead and upgrade our facility. So this is a list of what we are hoping to do next spring. It includes new flooring, new HVAC in our storage building, a host of smaller things, better signage, because how many of you have driven right by the museum and been like, oh, wait a minute, that was it. Right, I remember that's there. So lots of upcoming exciting projects. We're also working on a couple of our exhibits. So in the museum world, permanent exhibits should last for about 8 to 10 years before they get a good refresh, if not a full redo. Some of our exhibits are upwards of 30 years old at this point. So the one on the left, that's a snapshot, a close-up of part of our Native American exhibit that we have right now. We had an intern from the Masters in Public History program at Sac State who came to us last year. She has since interned at the Maidu Museum in Roseville, and she is going to be redoing this exhibit for us as her master's project. And an exhibit designer that I'm working with on a project we'll talk about in a minute has agreed to sort of mentor her through that progress. So she'll be working with him and with me, and it'll be done by the end of May next year. So I'm really thrilled to get to upgrade that. I'm sure some of you are thinking that picture on the right does not show anything having to do with our local African American community. That is showing that our agricultural gallery has sort of spilled over into our multicultural gallery. But next spring, when we do all of this building work, we're going to have a great opportunity to move some things around in the museum. So we're going to pull that out and get it back up in the ag wing where it belongs, which is going to create a nice amount of space in our multicultural gallery. So we'll be able to add some introductory information about the diversity of the area, and then it'll allow us to have space for our African American exhibit. And we just kicked off this process, so we're starting to research. We had an open house, which we invited the African American community to come in and meet us and talk about the project and what it might be, and that was well attended, so we're really excited to get that project going. But this is the one that I'm really excited to tell you about. This is our current exhibit on flooding in the area, and it's a little like 3.5 by 3 cubby that's tucked in between a couple of our other exhibits. Flooding is probably, at least in the 3 years I've lived here, it seems to me to be the biggest, scariest issue we're all going to have to deal with living in this region. This does not cover that adequately. So, thank you to the City of Yuba City. They gifted our nonprofit with $5,000 last year to begin the process of looking at what it would take to create a proper exhibit dedicated to the history of flooding in the area. And I'm really excited to say our exhibit designer, Brent Johnson, he was here for 2 days in May, and just over the weekend sent me some very initial first draft drawings of what he thinks our exhibit could maybe look like. So I intend to take out some of that obligatory old stuff that I mentioned earlier, because it gives us a lot of square footage to put this in. And I really think that our institution should be addressing issues like this. We should be talking about these really big picture issues that every member of our whole community will have to deal with sometime in their life. So these are first artistic impressions. What he's proposing is a layered effect utilizing quotes, interviews, photos. We have so much information in our collection in a variety of mediums about not just the 55 flood, that's the one we all think of first, but about all of the events that have happened over the years. And some of the lighter squares there will be monitors that will be able to have pictures fading in and out and have extra information on. And then this is another view of it where we could incorporate an oral history station and potentially incorporate information mapping of potential future events and things like that. So this is the sort of resource that I think the museum can and should be for this community, and this is the direction we're moving in. So I've talked for entirely too long, but that's where we're at. That's where we're going. If you guys have any questions, I would love to talk more.
Thank you, Jessica. We'll bring it back to the council for any comments or questions.
Just a real quick comment. Jessica, thank you for the work that you've done and your dedication to enhancing what is at our museum, our community museum. It is a remarkable effort that you've put forward, and exciting to see what the future will start to look like. And I also wanted to mention that in the past, I mean, the Harders were mentioned, but you know, two of the really steadfast people were Norman Lodelpiner,
Absolutely,
who really put a lot of effort in, also part of the Harder family, but they put a lot in, and just wish that they could be, you know, still involved on a everyday basis.
Yes, I agree with that. They moved away a few months after I got here, and so I know Loadell and Norm a little bit, and I do keep them updated. I send them regular packets from all of our monthly meetings, and they'll be getting a printout of this and just a little update on how the presentation went and everything. So they're still
great.
Involved in spirit.
Yeah, well, and thank you for keeping them in the loop and involved.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, questions? No? Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.